All right, today we're jumping into a really powerful story of leadership in the middle of a major crisis. It comes from the ancient text of Ezra, chapters 9 and 10. And we're going to break down this moment based on the analysis of Dr. Tiberius Rata, where a whole community's identity was, well, on the brink of collapse, and its leader had to figure out what to do in a nearly impossible situation. So, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the crisis itself, what shook the nation to its core. Then, we'll zoom in on the leader's dramatic and, frankly, very personal reaction. After that, we'll get into the controversial solution they came up with. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by pulling out some timeless lessons on leadership that, still hit home today. So, let's set the scene here. The people of Israel are just back from a long, long exile. They're in rebuilding mode, rebuilding their society, their temple, their whole identity. But right when it feels like they're finally getting back on their feet, a discovery is made that threatens to unravel everything they've been working for. And really, this is the question at the heart of the whole story. This isn't just about someone breaking a rule. We're talking about a threat to their very existence as a unique people, set apart for their God. I mean, the stakes just could not be any higher. So here's the bombshell that gets dropped on the leader, Ezra. Some officials come to him and basically say, hey, everyone, and we mean everyone, including the priests and leaders, is intermarrying with the people in the surrounding lands. And this was a massive deal, a direct violation of a core law that was meant to protect their unique faith from just fading away. Okay, now this is a really critical point we need to be clear on. Dr. Rata really emphasizes this. The issue here was not about race or ethnicity. It was theological. The big concern was that these marriages were bringing the worship of other gods into the community, which threatened their entire identity as worshipers of Yahweh. It was a crisis of faith, not race. So, how does Ezra react to this devastating news? Well, he doesn't call a press conference. He doesn't form a committee. His reaction is immediate, it's visceral, and it's deeply, deeply personal. Just look at this breakdown of his response. Tearing your clothes, pulling out your own hair. In the ancient world, these were signs of profound, devastating grief. He is physically acting out the spiritual catastrophe he feels inside. This isn't just a policy problem for him, it's a gut-wrenching disaster. And he just sits there, stunned, for hours before he can even form a single word. And when he finally does pray, this is how he starts. Not with anger, not with pointing fingers, but with this overwhelming sense of shame and humility. He feels the weight of his community's failure so personally that he can't even bring himself to look up to God. And this is so, so important. We have to remember Ezra himself hadn't done this. He was innocent. But listen to his words. Our iniquities, our guilt, we have been. He doesn't create some us versus them situation. As a true leader, he puts himself right in the middle of it, identifying with his people and taking their failure on himself. It's just a stunning model of empathetic leadership. Now, Ezra's prayer isn't where the story ends. His public display of grief and repentance actually sparks something in the people. And out of that shared moment, a drastic and painful plan starts to form. And interestingly, it's not even Ezra who proposes this. It's one of the other men in the crowd. He stands up and lays out this four-part solution. He says, look, first, we have to recommit to God. Second, we have to reverse what we've done, which means divorcing the foreign wives and sending them and their children away. Third, we have to do it all according to the law. And fourth, we've got to be strong and just do it. Okay, let's pause because this part of the story is obviously very difficult to read, and Dr. Rata makes a point here that is absolutely vital. This text is descriptive. It's telling us what happened in one very specific, very unique moment in history. It is not prescriptive. It's not a universal command for how we should act today. This was their response to what they believed was a threat to their very survival as a people. And this wasn't some snap judgment they made overnight. While they agreed to the plan, they knew how complicated it was, so they set up a council to review every single case, one by one. And this process, this investigation, took 3 full months to complete, which just shows you how seriously and methodically they went about it. So in the end, the investigation turned up 110 cases. And as you can see from this breakdown, the problem was everywhere. It wasn't just the everyday people. The data shows that a full 15% of the cases involved priests, the spiritual leaders, and another 9% were other temple staff. The sin had reached every single level of their society. So, we've walked through this incredibly intense story, crisis, confession, and it's really controversial action. So, what's the takeaway? What are the big leadership lessons we can pull from Ezra's story? Well, Dr. Rata's analysis really boils it down to this powerful idea of two sides of the same coin. Effective leadership isn't just one or the other. It demands deep spiritual piety, things like prayer, confession, humility, but that's not enough. It also demands decisive action, preparation, confrontation, and calling people to a higher standard of holiness. You absolutely need both. And honestly, this sentence just sums it up perfectly. Piety without action can be useless, and action without piety can be dangerous. Ezra's leadership is a masterclass in holding these two things together. He starts on his knees, broken in prayer. But he doesn't stay there. He gets up and leads his people through the hard work of making things right. And that leaves us with this final thought, a question to chew on. Ezra's story just brilliantly highlights this tension between devotion and duty, between faith and action. And it kind of forces us to ask, in our own lives, in our own challenges, where is that line for us? When does prayer end and action begin?